So, Shrikant, it's great to reconnect with you, and many congratulations for the launch of Video Deals. Very interesting concept. And from what I understand, it's an e-commerce platform that you've created where you're promising curated audience-based deals. It sounds a bit complex to me. So, if you can just tell me what this is, after all, about.
Okay. If I kind of take two or three inspirations here, Rajiv, one is, about 6 months back, I think, or 9 months back, the top 100 brands kind of boycotted Facebook because of various reasons. And
Mm-hmm.
everybody felt that Facebook revenues would drop substantially because the large brands have boycotted. But quite the contrary, Facebook grew their revenues 5% in the same period.
Right.
So that kind of showed that advertising, when it is made accessible to the small, medium enterprises, will definitely attract revenues, right? And then you apply that to the industry that we are passionate about, which is the outdoor media. The whole premise of outdoor media was that it would support the hyper local merchant in Coimbatore or in Guwahati or wherever, right? It is very localized media.
Right.
Yes, over the course of last 20, 30 years, the large brands came into it. And yes, we need them for the growth of the industry, and we need them for professionalism to come into the industry. But I think to some extent, the video deals is an attempt to go back to the roots, that there are advertisers who are out there who are willing to log in and buy perhaps smaller pieces of media, but in higher volumes of buyers. And how do we make that happen, right? So that's one inspiration that we had.
Okay.
Yeah. And does that make sense, Rajiv? I mean, whatever
Yeah,
that I've
it
said.
does. It does. I just want to understand how this actually works. You said it's an e-commerce platform, so they're naturally buyers and sellers, right? So how does that platform really work?
So in every market, what we have seen in general is, with the exception of a few iconic digital out-of-home assets, there is excess inventory that's not fully utilized, right? So what we are doing is we are curating those inventory into a simple website where, as a buyer, you could go in and say, I want to advertise in Bangalore and I want to reach a target audience of young adults, and I want to reach perhaps 1 lakh audiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then then there are packages which are curated already, and the 20 sites that fit that requirement comes up. But like any other Facebook advertising, it doesn't mean that the ad is going to be equally served on those 20 sites. The ads would be served and the audiences would be incremented, and at a point in time when 100,000 is reached, the ad serving would stop. So it's exactly the digital concept of what you do on Facebook that we are
Mm-hmm.
trying to Facebook out. Any form of digital media buying today is all audiences based. So for a small SME, that's really what he's looking at. I know my shop is in Mysore, or I'm in a particular location. I want to target audiences in that location, and I have a budget. How many audiences can you reach with that? I think that's the simple concept that we are bringing together. So yes, we need to have suppliers on board. And the good news is, as we announce, you will start seeing that there are many suppliers who have agreed to come in, primarily because it's bringing a new set of clients that they never had access to before, or so it's growing the industry, and that's why we have called it VideOOH.Deals, because again, if you look at the second inspiration, the entire digital wave was performance driven. That I'm able to go into search, I pay 10 cents, 5 cents, I get a click through. So it's all very performance oriented. But if you look at where digital is today, it's become heavily video centric as well, right?
Right.
So clients have started saying, I'm willing to take a budget and perhaps allocate some to TV, some to digital video sites, whether they are OTT platforms or whether they are YouTubes of the world. But the clients, in fact, McKinsey now calls it as performance branding, right? And here we are. Everybody agrees that the best branding media in the world is out of home. I mean, there's just no dispute, right? I mean, if you even had a small inkling of a doubt, you've got to go and ask the Ubers, the Spotify, the Food Pandas of the world on why they are spending money on outdoor. It is
Right.
because it's the best branding medium in the world. So when so much of video money is flowing to branding, how much of that is flowing to digital out of home? And I would love to hear your view, but I think it's minuscule. There's no money flowing into digital out of home because it's not positioned appropriately as along with the other measurable video sites, right? So if we feel that if we position it, yes, it may be more expensive than perhaps running it on the small screen, but it's still measurable, it's still accountable, and that's really what we are trying to do here.
Okay, so this works best when you have place-based networked digital out of home, right?
Yes, even individual. I think since you talked about network again, if you look at the historical way of selling a network was, I have perhaps 50 railway station screens, or I have 20 bus station screens. So you tend to bundle it, not because, yes, there are clients which are the pan-India clients who want that scale. So bundling makes sense. You create a network of 20 shopping malls. Brilliant. That works for that client. But perhaps there's another set of clients who are kind of growing, may not have a pan-India view yet, or they may have a hyper-local view. And we are primarily looking at the whole startup funded economy, where we know in India and in many parts of the world, there are a lot of D2C, as they call it, the direct-to-consumer business, which are looking
Right.
at brand. And maybe they will also think pan-India basis. And then there are some smaller ones who are very local. So perhaps we are looking at one, aggregating 10 small networks into one pan-India network for the pan-India buyer. Then we are looking at taking one network and splitting it into 10 pieces for the local buyer. So we are looking at doing both with the VideOOH.Deals concept.
All right. Shrikant, one of the challenges for, especially since you're targeting the smaller advertisers and in a way you are democratizing the platform, one challenge that would still remain unaddressed to my mind would be the content itself, because that is expensive as well. So is there a way that is getting addressed?
Yes, Rajiv. I mean, we'll have to see how it scales up, but you brought up a very important point. We've already started thinking about providing some templatized content, which makes it easier for a smaller advertiser to create content. And that's probably the way that we will have to fix it as we scale it up. But the idea is, yes, we will make it simpler for them to create content. Or on another hand, because they are creating content for YouTube or Facebook or whatever it is, find a way to repurpose that content that they are creating for video and then pipe it. So I think we're going to see both scenarios. That's why I said it's not just the micro buyer that we are looking at. We're also looking at startups, who are well funded, who are direct to consumer, who want to build a brand, and perhaps they find it easy to use this. And then you've got the city level small merchant who wants to go hyper local. I think we're going to see both sides of the spectrum.
Shrikant, a lot would also depend on where the digital media assets are located in the outer space. And if you're looking at merchants and such advertisers to be actually participating on this platform, then do you think they will have those kind of media assets in the close proximity of their business areas?
Okay. I mean, if we take India specifically, there has not been enough large street or iconic assets, right? A lot of them have been indoors primarily.
Right.
But it has a certain value to it as well, that many of the fintech, for example, disruptors would be interested in capturing an audience which is probably in condominiums or in office blocks inside. So that would match their target very well. Similarly, if you look at even new brands that are being created in the consumer fast FMCG world, then again, they would be interested in perhaps a point of sale media, which is either in a shopping mall or inside retail. So thankfully, there are some matches in terms of where they can find it. What is probably lacking right now is the large iconic screens which are used purely for branding or a product launch, right? I mean, for example, Disney Plus, right now I'm operating out of Singapore, and Disney Plus launched in Singapore in January. And even Amazon came in January, and they used some of our services and platforms. They just dominated every screen that you could lay a hand on, right?
Right.
Right. So those kind of situations, I think, anyway, I feel people may not go to VideOOH.Deals. They would go through an agency kind of a service where, but I think that's the only space I still see compared to rest of Asia. India still doesn't have those Times Square or Bukit Bintang Square or an Orchard Road kind of iconic screens yet, right? Or in Thailand, the Sukhumvit. I think that's the only gap. But I think the indoor screens would play very well to both in terms of even B2B fintech startups as well as potentially a direct-to-consumer set of businesses.
Excellent. Shrikant, your value propositions of affordability and accessibility, they pan out well for the advertisers. What's the deal for the media owners there?
Okay. So there are two ways. When we say affordability and accessibility is obviously quite straightforward, that you're able to log in, you're able to make a purchase. You don't have to go through lengthy discovery of what the assets are. So I think that's the accessibility part of it, which makes it simple. Now, when we talk about affordability, we are not necessarily talking about discounted low price. Affordability and low price are two different things in my view, right? So if I wear the supplier hat, and I go back to the Facebook example, did Facebook discount their media to sell to a small and medium retailer, right? The answer is obviously no, they did not discount. They just created a system that scales effectively for a small buyer, right? So, and when we say a small buyer, it doesn't mean he's getting it discounted. He's not buying your network of 20 screens. He's buying probably 3 screens that matters to him because they are in the neighborhood that he's interested in. So it's a process of education, but we tell our suppliers, listen, there is an element of deal creation that we need to do, which makes it cheaper. And you're able to do that a week before. So you can decide what your price of that media is a week before. Thereby, if you've got very high yields and high utilization, you could reduce it. But if you have lower utilization, then this becomes additional revenue that comes in the last minute, right? So there are a few concepts here. Affordable is not cheap, but at the same time, we all know, right? I mean, why do we buy online? Is there has to be an element of ease, and there's also an element of value creation that has to be done. And so the flexibility is with the supplier, that he makes the call on what price. All we are doing is to bring that platform, bring the buyer in. And if their price is too high, perhaps they may not get a very high share. And they are able to calibrate it based on what their current sales channels are generating. And thankfully, because this is a new set of buyers, they have to treat this as a new channel for a new set of buyers.
Right, Shrikant. One of the big challenges in creating any kind of a platform is in actually onboarding the media owners, the people who have the media assets. How are you addressing this? Somewhere along, I think I got a sense that you are spoken to a very large number of media owners. And which are the markets in which I think you're getting a better response?
I think like we have BC and AD, there is a pre-COVID and post-COVID reality, right?
Right.
And I would say that even pre-COVID, there were a lot of interest, but in terms of adoption, probably people were just still sitting on the fence and watching where it would go, right?
Right, right.
But we all know, I mean, this is the industry that's been hit the worst in the media sector, right? I mean,
So true.
and I'm not saying it in any negative way. That's the reality.
Right.
But I always see there's a beauty that as things start getting better, this media is going to be the fastest growing media in 2021, in my view. Right? It's going to beat hands down every other form of media asset out there, including digital video, everything. It's going to grow at a very rapid pace. And signs are already there that as we open up the market and people lose their fear, and suddenly you start having digital fatigue, right? I mean, if you've seen in December, and so there were clients like Uber who said they will reduce their digital ad spend from 150 million to 50 million, and then they came back and they said life went on. So where did that 100 million go?
Oh.
Despite
Right.
it's not a question of just the metrics, but it's a question of a fatigue that is there. So I think, so if you look at it, on one hand, this is the worst hit industry. On another hand, this is the greatest opportunity that we have to do it right when we get the opportunity, right? So I think that sentiment, I would say, at least with 90 to 95% of the suppliers, that sentiment is resonating, right?
Okay.
I mean, and it's as high as that, Rajiv. I'm not exaggerating that. It's as high as that. One, there is a reality of what has happened in the last 1 year, but there is also a sense of the opportunity. So they're saying, okay, I think we have an opportunity to get it right now. We can't go and rely on the old methods, because that will not scale. And even if money flows in, you won't be able to capture it, you won't be able to execute it, you won't be able to show value to it to sustain it.
Right.
So automation has become the norm going forward. The only question is, what parts of your inventory would you still target very large clients, and what part of the inventory would you target the SMEs? It's going to be a portfolio decision. And I think that's really where we are seeing most of our conversations.
All right, Shrikant. So just to also understand, which are the markets that are ready for this?
Okay. See, obviously we picked two markets, and as we launch, those would be the markets that go live one after another. So we're trying to do this agile, that we will keep releasing more packages, more markets. And so we took Singapore as a strong test bed because of the strong digitization. As you know, 70% of out of home is already digitized and 30% goes to static. So it's a highly digitized market to start off with. And the second beauty is also that it's a highly funded startup industry market, and many of them have regional aspirations as well. The second market we chose was India, because I think it has all the elements of what I talked about, with the exception of access to digital assets. I think of all the ASEAN countries, it's probably the least digitized, not in terms of number of assets, because the sheer size of India means you've got a large number of assets, but in proportion to the investment it attracts, it's a very, very small market today. Right? But it's a highly funded market in terms of startups, in terms of new businesses, which desperately need branding, which need that presence. So we felt perhaps we can address a bit of injustice in India by bringing more money to digital out of home, and hopefully that will spur the growth of the industry.
So talking about the Indian market, in which case much of those advertising opportunities would be in places like malls and cineplexes and corporate parks, pubs, right? These would be the places. Right.
I mean, that's where the assets are today, and I think that's really what we have. Of course, airports.
And what about the airports? Yeah, airports, railways, and metro networks.
Absolutely, you'll see a sprinkler of all of them, because to a large extent, Rajiv, when you invent or when you create something new, there is a learning involved. I mean, we are not Nostradamus to exactly predict where it will go. So
Right.
the first part, we are also setting expectations with our partners to say, listen, we are going to experiment, we will learn together,
Okay.
and perhaps we'll grow the industry together, right? So you will see that's why it's not going to be one big bang approach. We will start in two markets. We'll start with a few suppliers. We'll start with some curated packages. We'll take it to market. We'll learn and we'll fix. But I think the direction in which it is going, that so broadly, then if you're a supplier and you have a set of digital screens, then you've got to step back and say, you know, like every other business, right? Like every other business, you've got to say, where, how do I service my large clients? And that will be through agencies, that would be through face to face. How do I serve my SMEs? That would be through marketplaces, that would be through either programmatic or it could be through e-commerce kind of marketplaces. So I think you will start then building a portfolio of channels and a portfolio of media that suits one channel better than the other. I mean, we are living in an information age, right? I mean, if and I think that's the realization that I see with the suppliers, where historically outdoor was, I have a concession, I will erect something and I'll make money. Now I think everybody is coming to a conclusion that we need to be smart because our buyers are getting smarter. Right?
Absolutely. Final question, Shrikant. Since you are targeting the smaller advertisers mostly, right? So you not necessarily take the agency route for demand creation. So how is this demand creation going to happen?
Yes, we are targeting smaller, and also we are targeting some growing users, right? So whoever we call as may not be even small, but they are in their growth phase, right? So which obviously brings it back to a few segments that we need to target. Right? One is we are looking at disruptors, because we have seen, I think as early as 2 years back, almost 30% of out of home was with the digital brands, the born digital brands. So we are looking for similar brands which perhaps are spending on TV, but they are not spending on out of home today. Right? And
Right.
there are brands which are upcoming who see TV as a natural video choice, but they're not seeing definitely digital out of home as a video choice. Right? So we want to correct that imbalance. So we are targeting basically the growth community, which means it's funded startups which are coming in either in a direct to consumer in a digital business, or they are perhaps in FMCG or products and services, which could be targeting the consumer, right? So I think the new brands that India is creating are the ones that we want to go and talk to, because they are a lot more nimble, a lot more agile, and if we show value to them and they adopt the media, and as they grow, they'll spend more. And I know at some point in time they would stop buying online and they would move into an agency-led buying model, and that's fine. I mean, it's a progression at the end of the day. When they get larger and larger, they perhaps would go into an agency-led buying.
Absolutely. Very, very interesting, Shrikant. Let me wish you the very best for this venture, and we will certainly stay connected, and we hope to hear more and more really good developments on your platform. So
Wonderful.
thank you so much, Shrikant.